an ecclesiastical edition of survival. The purpose of a debate is that in an organized and in an orderly way, two opposing positions can be presented, rebutted, and questioned. So the rules that we have are for your benefit as well as for the speaker's benefit, that all might be treated fairly and so that you are able to have the opportunity for the best presentations of both sides. There will be a strict observance of the time limits. There will be opening remarks by each speaker for 25 minutes. There will be rebuttals by each speaker for 8 minutes. There will be a break. It says 10 minutes. When Chris Arnzen put this down, I'm sure that was a lapse in his sanity, but that's what he said. We'll try to keep it to 10 minutes. There will then be 2 cross-examination periods of 15 minutes each, closing remarks of 7 minutes each. Theoretically, we should be done that about 10:30 this evening, and then there will be time for questions. Please do not interrupt any of the presentations with your applause. All that will do is interrupt the time for the speaker that you're applauding, and that is not helping that speaker. You are welcome to applaud at the end, but please observe decorum. Do not interrupt any of the speeches with applause. This, again, is not a ball game. No boos, no hisses, no loud sighs, no saying loudly or softly, "That's a lie," or heresy. I have a gavel, and I will use it to call for order. That is not polite, and even though you are from New York, most of you, except the one from New Jersey whose car is on the busboy, you still must be polite during the debate. I ask that all cell phones and all beepers and any other bits of technology that will interrupt debate by beeps or rings be turned off so that no one is interrupted by them, or you may use your vibrate mode. And please, do not be so barbaric as to speak on the phone to someone in this room in the middle of the debate. If you absolutely must have your evening interrupted, please go out in the hall or outside and use your cell phone. Questions and answers. We have observed over the years that no one at a debate knows how to ask a question. I think that in our culture, in which education has largely been flushed down the toilet, we don't even know what a question is. A question is an inquiry. It asks for an answer. It asks for clarification, or it asks for added information. And because we have found that no one in an audience knows how to ask a question, at least here in New York, we have provided question paper or cards for you to write down your question. It ends in a question mark. If you write down an affirmation, your doctrinal belief, or quotations from the Bible to illumine the speakers, that's not a question. It will not get very far. But if you will write down your question on a card or on the back of your ticket and bring it up here at the break, then I'll go through those cards and we will use those for the question times at the end. What I ask is that you put your address, if you desire, your address, regular home address or email address on the card. If these men are not able, don't have the time to answer your questions, they will get the questions at the end and they will communicate with you personally. I've given you the format. I make you one practical suggestion for how to take notes during the debate. Do not write your notes from top to bottom. That's not going to help you in a debate. You're best to take your sheet of paper, put it in landscape position, and begin. Mr. Michuta is going to begin his speech in one column. Write down the main points that he makes. And then in the next column, the main points that Mr. White makes. And then as the debate proceeds with questions and answers and rebuttal, follow across what's called a flow chart so that by the end of the debate you have an idea of the issues that have been discussed, whether the men have really interacted with one another, whether questions have been answered, and so forth. So one of my reasons for doing this is, even though I do think it's largely hopeless that our culture will ever really appreciate debate, with these two competent men, you have the opportunity to learn. So try to use a flow chart for that purpose. So without further ado, we will begin the debate this evening. The topic which is presented this evening is The deuterocanonical, or otherwise known as apocryphal books, are Scripture. Mr. Machuta affirms the proposition, and Dr. White denies the proposition. We will begin with Mr. Machuta with his 25 minutes of remarks. Mr. Machuta.
Thank you very much. Oh, is my mic on? My mic's on? Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. I'm okay, I think. Okay, good. Thank you very much. This paraphrase St. Peter's words, it's good to be here. The resolution that I have to defend tonight is that the Deuterocanon, which Protestants call Apocrypha, is Scripture. Now, the books of the Deuterocanon are Judah, Tobit, Wisdom, Sirach, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, Baruch, and also certain sections of Esther and Daniel. Now, a term that you'll likely hear thrown around a lot tonight is the word canon, which in this context is not a weapon that shoots ballistic missiles. A canon is a technical theological term that denotes or connotes an authoritative list of books. Now, since technical theological terms can change with time and people can draw an erroneous list of books, I'd rather focus on the biblical definition of Scripture as given by St. Paul, that all Scripture is inspired by God. It's theopneustos. It's God-breathed. Therefore, if the canon is inspired, then it's Scripture. If it's not inspired, then it's not Scripture, regardless if someone wishes to attach the word canon to it or not, or canonical to them or not. Now, in addition to demonstrating this positive aspect for the inspired status of these books, there's also a negative aspect I need to address. In other words, if these books are inspired, then there cannot be a closed, fixed collection of books so as to exclude the deuterocanonical books. Now, some people might not be familiar with the term closed canon. A closed canon is not merely an affirmation that certain books are inspired and accepted without controversy. A closed canon is a declaration that these books, and only these books, are inspired Scripture to the exclusion of all other writings. Now, the topic, I'm sure Dr. White will agree with me, is quite complex tonight. We probably won't be able to even scratch the surface. So what I'd like to do in my opening statement is to provide a chronological overview of the evidence, not meaning to be complete,